Picture this: 60,000 soldiers slam into a wall of silence. June 17, 1462. The Ottoman army, the greatest war machine on earth, doesn't halt because of shield walls or cannon barriers. They halt because they can't breathe. Sultan Mehmed II, the man who crushed the walls of Constantinople, rides to the front lines and covers his mouth. The air isn't just hot, solid, with the stench of decay. Before him, stretching for 3 kilometers, 20,000 stakes pierce the sky. And on every single point, a body slides slowly toward earth. This isn't a battlefield. It's a gallery. High above the mass of rotting peasantry, one stake towers over the rest. It holds the corpse of Hamza Pasha, the Sultan's high-ranking general. He isn't stripped naked like the others. He still wears his priceless crimson silk robes and velvet turban, the fabric flapping mockingly against his liquefied skin. The message is brutal in its irony. Vlad respects the general's rank enough to give him the highest stake, but hates him enough to let him rot in his finest clothes. Mehmed, sickened to his stomach, turns his horse around. He cannot fight a man who does this. This is the true story of Vlad the Impaler. And it begins where the Sultan's courage ends. Before we dive into this horror, understand one thing. Vlad III wasn't born a monster. He was made one. By his father's betrayal. By Ottoman dungeons. By watching his brother buried alive. By a medieval world where mercy was suicide and cruelty was survival. This isn't the vampire from movies. No cape. No fangs. No supernatural powers. This is the real Dracula. And the reality is far more terrifying than any fiction. Because what Vlad did, the forest of corpses, the poison wells, the biological warfare, the psychological terror, it actually worked. He stopped the most powerful empire on earth with 30,000 peasants and a willingness to become something worse than his enemies. How does a small nation survive when trapped between 2 crushing empires? What happens when a traumatized hostage grows up to use his captor's tactics against them? How do you fight an army 3 times your size when you have no hope of winning? You don't fight them. You terrorize them. Let's find out how. To understand the monster, you need to meet the boy. Year 1442. A dusty road at the edge of the Ottoman Empire. A father makes a transaction that will doom thousands. Vlad Dracula, ruler of Wallachia, modern Romania, is desperate to keep his throne. To prove loyalty to Sultan Murad II, he offers the only collateral that matters. His own flesh and blood. He hands over his 2 younger sons to Ottoman guards. Radu is 7 years old. Wide-eyed. Terrified. Vlad is 11. As boys are dragged away toward the empire's interior, they watch their father ride back to Wallachia. He doesn't look back. It's the definitive moment of betrayal that severs young Vlad's connection to humanity. They're taken to fortress of Egrigos deep in Anatolia. But this isn't dark rat-infested dungeon. It's something more insidious. A gilded cage. The Sultan doesn't want dead hostages. He wants brainwashed puppets. He wants to raise these boys to be loyal Ottoman vassals who'll one day rule Wallachia in his name. The experience splits the brothers into 2 irreconcilable halves. Radu, the younger one, is seduced by Ottoman splendor. He's beautiful, pliable, eager to please. Converts to Islam. Adopts the clothing, language, customs. Becomes known as Radu Selfrumos, Radu the Handsome. Eventually finds his way into inner circle of Sultan's son, young Mehmed. They study together. Hunt together. Perhaps, as rumors suggest, become lovers. Radu looks at his captors and sees family. Vlad looks at them and sees only targets. He's the problem child. Refuses to learn prayers. Mocks guards. Clings to Wallachian identity with violent stubbornness. And for his insolence? He pays in blood. The Ottomans are masters of discipline. Vlad becomes intimate with the falaka, punishment where victims' feet are secured in wooden block and beaten with rods until bones crack. He learns to walk on swollen purple flesh. He learns that pain is temporary but submission is permanent. Yet amidst beatings and isolation, young Vlad is observing. He's a predator in training. He watches the Janissaries, Sultan's elite shock troops. These men are kidnapped Christian children raised to be fanatical Islamic warriors. Vlad sees their discipline, their total lack of fear. Realizes that Ottoman Empire isn't held together by love or loyalty, but by terrifying absolute order. Most importantly, he watches how they handle treason. Impalement wasn't a Wallachian invention. It was Ottoman. Vlad likely saw it used by Ottoman governors to suppress local uprisings. He watches the slow, agonizing death of rebels, noting how terror silences crowds. He studies the anatomy of fear. realizes that if small nation wants to survive against giant, it cannot fight with honor. It must fight with insanity. While Radu learns poetry and court etiquette in gardens, Vlad is mentally taking notes on torture, logistics, and terror. He stops fighting guards, starts analyzing them. He isn't becoming Ottoman, but he's becoming something new, a hybrid. Burning hatred of Wallachian patriot, armed with cold, systematic cruelty of Ottoman general. The Sultan thinks he's breaking the boy's spirit. In reality, he's forging a weapon that will one day be turned against him. By time Vlad is released years later, frightened 11-year-old is gone. In his place, young man with dead eyes and very clear understanding of how world works. Kill them before they kill you. And make sure they suffer enough that their ghosts are afraid to haunt you. Vlad returns to Wallachia in 1448, backed by Ottoman cavalry unit, expecting to find kingdom mourning his father. Instead he finds a crime scene. News hits him with force a physical blow. His father, Vlad Dracula, hadn't fallen in glorious combat. He'd been assassinated in marshes behind his own palace, struck down by very nobles who'd sworn fealty. But fate of his older brother Mircea is the detail that truly snaps something inside Vlad's mind. Mircea was a warrior, young man who'd fought by their father's side. The local warlords, known as Wallachian boyars, didn't just kill him. They captured him in Targovist, dragged him through streets, tortured him. Then, in final act of contempt, they buried him alive. Imagine that death. Soil filling your mouth, weight of earth crushing your chest. Absolute darkness as you claw at coffin lid or raw dirt, screaming for mercy that never comes. Vlad visualizes this every night. He imagines soil in his brother's lungs. Realizes that Ottoman dungeons were kindergarten compared to treacherous politics of his own home. Wallachia isn't unified country. It's nest of vipers. The boyars are true rulers. Powerful, entrenched aristocracy who treat throne like musical chairs. In last century they've crowned and killed princes at will. To them, prince is just temporary manager. If he demands too much or taxes too heavily, they simply slit his throat and replace him with more obedient cousin. They've grown fat, rich, arrogant on this cycle of regicide. For a brief time in 1448, Vlad sits on throne. But he's weak. Quickly ousted by Hungarians. Forced into exile, wandering wilds of Moldavia. He spends years in wilderness. Brooding. Planning. Waiting. He knows, if he ever returns to Targovist he cannot just be another prince. If he tries ruling by old laws, he'll end up in shallow grave next to his brother. When he finally seizes power for second time in 1456, boyars sneer. They see 25-year-old washout. Former Turkish hostage who surely won't last the winter. They welcome him with fake smiles and poisoned wine, already plotting who'll replace him. They believe he's weak because he's quiet. They are fatally wrong. Vlad plays part of naive ruler perfectly. Accepts their insincere pledges of loyalty. He investigates records of Mircea's death. Memorizes names of every noble family involved in coup. Counts their estates, their wealth, their soldiers. He isn't governing. He's hunting. Realizes, to secure Wallachia against invading empires, he first has to decapitate internal rot. He needs to break the wheel of betrayal that destroyed his family. Boyars think they're masters of the game. Don't realize the game has changed. They're dealing with man who stared into abyss of Ottoman cruelty, and decided to bring that abyss home. The list of names is complete. Invitations are written. It's time for a party. Easter Sunday, 1457. Great hall of princely court in Targovist alive with sound of lute music and clinking of silver goblets. Air smells of roasted lamb and spiced wine. 500 of Wallachia's most powerful nobles, the boyars, and their families seated at long wooden tables. Dressed in finest brocades, furs, jewelry. Laughing. Eating. Toasting to health of their new prince. Vlad sits at head of high table. He isn't eating. He's watching. To boyars this is sign of reconciliation. They believe young wolf has been tamed. That he understands he needs their money and private armies to rule. But as feast reaches its height, Vlad raises a hand. Music stops. Laughter dies. Silence becomes sudden and heavy. He stands. Voice calm. Almost conversational. He asks simple question to the room. How many princes have you survived? The boyars, drunk and arrogant, begin to boast. One shouts, 7. Another laughs, 12. A third claims to have served 30 rulers in his lifetime. They think it's a game. Think they're bragging about longevity. Vlad nods slowly. To him this isn't boast. It's confession. Every prince they survived was prince they betrayed, dethroned, or murdered. He looks at them and sees the men who buried his brother alive. He remembers vow he made, blood for blood. But suffering for treason. He gives signal. Doors to great hall slam shut. From shadows, his loyal guards, mercenaries owing allegiance only to him, step forward with drawn swords. The Easter feast massacre begins instantly. No trial. No debate. Older boyars, too frail to work, dragged from chairs and impaled right there in courtyard. Their screams mixing with church bells ringing for resurrection of Christ. But for young and healthy? Death would be too easy. Vlad has special purpose for them. He strips them of titles, but not clothes. Still wearing expensive Easter finery, they're shackled together and marched out of city. Destination: remote, jagged cliff overlooking Argesh River. 50 miles away. Site of ancient ruin Vlad intends to turn into impregnable fortress, Poenary Castle. The boyars are forced to become slave labor. They form human chain up steep mountainside, passing heavy stones and buckets of mortar hand to hand. No breaks. No food. They work under whip day and night. Months pass. Velvet robes rot and fall off bodies in rags. Silk tunics disintegrate in rain and sweat. Their soft noble hands stripped of skin, exposing raw muscle and bone. They work until they drop. When they drop, tossed into ravine below, replaced by next noble in line. By time castle is finished, old aristocracy of Wallachia has effectively ceased to exist. In their place, fortress of stone built literally on bones of traitors. Vlad achieved 2 goals with one stroke. Secured borders with new stronghold, brutally reset political order. Message to country is terrifyingly simple. There are no more boyars. There is only Dracula. With aristocracy crushed under stone and mortar, Vlad turned gaze downward to streets. He'd silenced wolves in castle. Now he intended to discipline sheep in village. His vision for Wallachia was absolute. Didn't just want secure border. Wanted moral utopia. But in Vlad's mind, perfect society was like perfect garden. It required aggressive pruning. He looked at his capital and saw poverty, sickness, begging. To modern ruler, these are social issues to manage. To Vlad? They were blemishes on dignity of state. He devised solution characteristically efficient and horrifyingly final. He announced grand banquet in Targovist, specifically inviting the poor, sick, lame, elderly. Hundreds gathered in large wooden hall, grateful for Prince's sudden generosity. They ate meat, drank wine, celebrated their good fortune. As feast concluded, Vlad appeared before them. Asked simple question: do you want to be without care in the world, lacking nothing? The crowd, believing he was offering pensions or housing, shouted, yes. Vlad nodded, stepped out, ordered guards to board up doors and windows. Then they set the hall on fire. As screams rose with smoke, Vlad reportedly told captains he'd done this for 2 reasons. First, so they'd no longer suffer. Second, so his nation would contain no burden. In one night, he'd solved poverty by incinerating the poor. This was nature of his draconian laws. Crime wasn't punished, it was obliterated. Whether you stole loaf of bread or betrayed state, sentence was often same, the stake. The stake didn't discriminate. This created atmosphere of supernatural terror. People of Wallachia weren't just afraid of getting caught. They were afraid of Prince's omniscience. The ultimate symbol of this absolute control, Vlad's golden cup. According to chronicles, Vlad ordered cup made of solid gold, encrusted with gems, placed on rim of public water fountain in central square of Targovist. It was there for anyone to use. Thirsty travelers, merchants, peasants, everyone could drink from it. But one rule, the cup must never leave the fountain. In any other city, London, Paris, Constantinople, that cup would have vanished in 5 minutes. But in Targovist? It sat there. For years. 24 hours a day. Unguarded. It glimmered in moonlight, tempting fortune worth more than peasant could earn in 10 lifetimes. Yet no one touched it. No one dared. Invisible hand of Vlad's terror stronger than strongest iron chain. This was the paradox of his reign. He was mass murderer. Yet under his rule, Wallachia became arguably safest place in known world. You could drop bag of gold on road and return week later to find it undisturbed. He'd replaced corruption with fear. Chaos with silence so profound it felt like grave. But this silence was about to be broken. The Ottoman Empire had not forgotten their hostage. And Sultan was done sending messengers. By winter 1461, silence in Wallachia had become deafening, echoing all way to Constantinople. Vlad had stopped paying the jizya, annual tax of 10,000 gold coins and 500 boys to be trained as janissaries demanded by Sultan. To Mem II, this wasn't just lost revenue. It was open revolt. Mem sent 2 high-ranking envoys to Targovist. Mission ostensibly diplomatic: collect tribute and remind Prince of his place. But in reality, they were there to assess the threat. Meeting took place in Vlad's throne room. Envoys, dressed in flowing robes and large intricate turbans, bowed before Prince but did not remove headgear. In presence of Christian monarch, this was breach of protocol. In Ottoman court, however, removing turban was sign of disgrace. Vlad knew this custom perfectly. He'd lived among them for years. He understood their laws better than they understood his. But he saw opportunity for piece of theater that would shock the world. He feigned offense. Asked them why they insulted him by keeping heads covered. Envoys, perhaps arrogant in status as representatives of superpower, replied, "It is not our custom to remove turban for anyone. Not even the Sultan." Vlad smiled. Then reportedly said, "I will help you strengthen your custom, so that you may never break it again." He signaled guards. Envoys seized. Forced to knees. Vlad ordered small iron nails brought forward. While diplomats screamed in mixture of confusion and terror, guards hammered nails directly through fabric of turbans and into their skulls. He didn't kill them immediately. Let them suffer. Ensuring Ottoman envoys' nailed turbans remained permanently attached to their heads. He then sent them back to Constantinople with message: "I'm not your slave. I am sovereign prince." When envoys, or what was left of them, stumbled back into Mem's court, Sultan was reportedly white with rage. This was more than execution. It was personal desecration. Vlad had taken symbol of their faith and dignity, turned it into instrument of torture. Diplomatic channels were closed. Time for taxes over. Mem II began gathering his army. Called upon vassals from across empire. Assembled force 3 times size of one that took Constantinople. He was coming to Wallachia not to conquer it, but to erase Vlad from history. The cage of gold had failed. Now it was time for sword. Spring 1462. Ottoman war machine crosses the Danube. Mem II brings army estimated at over 60,000 men, supported by fleet of ships and most advanced artillery of the age. Against this Leviathan, Vlad has fewer than 30,000 soldiers. Mostly peasants and light cavalry. In conventional war, Wallachia would be crushed before noon. But Vlad has no intention of fighting conventional war. He knows he cannot win on battlefield. So he decides to make the battlefield itself the enemy. As Ottoman army marches north, they find nothing but ash. Vlad initiates total scorched earth policy. Orders his own people to burn crops, slaughter livestock, retreat into mountains. Ottomans are marching into man-made desert. No grain to forage. No game to hunt. Blistering Balkan sun beats down on soldiers clad in heavy armor. When they rush to village wells to drink, they find water black and foul. Vlad has poisoned water sources with animal carcasses and rotting flesh. Thirst begins killing more men than arrows. But physical deprivation is only first layer of nightmare. Vlad unleashes form of psychological and biological warfare centuries ahead of its time. He knows his army too small to confront janissaries. So he recruits different kind of soldier. He scours kingdom for the sick. Men and women suffering from bubonic plague, leprosy, tuberculosis are not quarantined. They're weaponized. Vlad dresses them in Ottoman clothing and sends them to infiltrate enemy camps at night. These walking biological bombs mix with Turkish soldiers, sharing food, touching water skins, spreading infection deep behind lines. It's suicide mission for the sick. But creates panic spreading faster than disease itself. Ottoman soldiers stop trusting each other. Every cough is death sentence. Every shadow contains potential assassin. Vlad's cavalry strikes like ghosts. Attack supply lines. Pick off stragglers. Vanish back into forest before Ottomans can form battle lines. They never sleep. Never stand still. Bleeding the giant to death one cut at a time. Mem's army is starving. Thirsty. Diseased. Exhausted. They haven't even seen main Wallachian force yet. Sultan pushes forward, driven by rage and belief that once they reach Targovist, they'll crush the impudent gnat. He doesn't realize, Vlad is guiding him. Herding Ottoman army into specific location. A kill zone where Prince plans to execute most audacious special operations mission in medieval history. The cat-and-mouse game is over. Hunter is about to become hunted. Sun sets on June 16, 1462, plunging foothills of Carpathians into pitch blackness. Ottoman army, exhausted and on edge, settles into encampment just south of capital. Its city of canvas housing nearly 100,000 men, horses, camels. They believe they're safe in their numbers. They believe enemy is hiding in mountains. They're wrong. The enemy is walking right through front gate. Vlad III doesn't send general to do this job. He leads it himself. Selects few thousand of his most elite cavalrymen. They discard heavy armor for speed. Don't wear Wallachian insignias. Instead, don turbans and tunics taken from dead Ottoman prisoners. Vlad rides at front, indistinguishable from Turkish commander. He speaks their language fluently, skill forced upon him during childhood captivity now becoming his deadliest weapon. They drift past outer sentries like smoke. When challenged, Vlad barks orders in perfect Turkish, reprimanding guards for lack of discipline. The sentries, terrified of offending high-ranking officer, let them pass. They ride deep into heart of the beast, navigating labyrinth of tents until they're within striking distance of Sultan's personal quarters. Then silence shatters. The night attack begins with roar sounding like earth splitting open. Vlad's men light torches and blow bugles from every direction, creating illusion of army 10 times their size. They slash through tent ropes, collapsing canvas onto sleeping soldiers, trapping them in suffocating shrouds before stabbing them to death. Vlad has only one target. He ignores gold, supplies, generals. Drives his horse straight toward largest, most opulent tent in center of camp, silken palace of the Sultan. He wants to cut head off snake. In chaos, amidst smoke and screaming horses, his intelligence fails him by mere meters. He attacks tents of grand viziers, mistaking them for Mehmed. Slaughters high command. But Sultan is just out of reach, surrounded by wall of janissaries forming human shield around their master. Realizing target is missed and element of surprise fading, Vlad signals retreat. But he leaves parting gift. As his men vanish back into darkness, Ottoman camp remains in state of total pandemonium. In confusion, Ottoman soldiers, terrified and unable to distinguish friend from foe in flickering torchlight, turn blades on each other. 4 hours until dawn, they continue massacring their own ranks, driven by paranoia that Impaler is everywhere. By time sun rises, thousands of Turkish bodies litter ground. Many killed by their own comrades. Vlad has proven, even surrounded by 60,000 men, Sultan is not safe. He's turned Ottoman numerical advantage into liability. Mehmed survives, but his confidence is shattered. He orders army to march on Targovist, desperate to end nightmare with decisive siege. He expects to find fortified city defending its prince. Instead, he arrives at capital to find gates wide open. No soldiers. No resistance. Just road leading to forest. The forest of the impaled. June 17, 1462. Mehmed II, conqueror of Constantinople, most powerful man on earth, rides toward Targovist expecting final battle. Instead, he rides into hell. The smell hits first. Not just unpleasant. Physically overwhelming. Air becomes thick. Viscous. Soldiers gag. Cover mouths. Horses refuse to advance, rearing, panicking, trying to flee. Then they see it. Stretching for 3 kilometers, 20,000 stakes pierce the sky. And on every single point, a body. Not fresh bodies. These have been here for days. Weeks. Decomposing in brutal summer heat. Ottomans are marching through man-made graveyard designed specifically to break their will. The corpses aren't random. They're arranged. Organized. By rank. By crime. By Vlad's twisted sense of order. Low-ranking prisoners on shorter stakes near perimeter. High-ranking officials on taller stakes toward center. And at the very heart, towering above all, the corpse of Hamza Pasha, Mehmed's own general. Still wearing his priceless crimson silk robes and velvet turban. The fabric flapping mockingly against liquefied skin. The message brutal in its irony. Vlad respects general's rank enough to give him highest stake, but hates him enough to let him rot in his finest clothes. This is psychological warfare at its most sophisticated. Vlad isn't just killing enemies. He's displaying them. Creating gallery of horror designed to communicate one message. This is what happens to those who invade Wallachia. This is what I am capable of. This is what awaits you. For Ottoman soldiers, this is beyond their experience. They've seen battlefields, massacres, sieges. But this is something else entirely. This is industrial-scale terror. Systematized horror. The impalement process itself was designed for maximum suffering. Stake inserted through rectum or vagina, carefully avoiding vital organs. Victims' own body weight slowly dragging them down over hours or days. Some took 3 days to die. Screaming. Begging. Visible from miles away. Mem 2, man who'd ordered executions of thousands, looks at this forest and realizes, he's not fighting soldier. He's fighting madman. And you can't defeat madness with military tactics. He turns his horse around. Gives order that shocks his generals. We're leaving. Officers protest. But we outnumber them 3-1. We haven't even fought yet. Memd, you don't understand. We've already lost. That man, he points toward distant mountains where Vlad is watching. He's not human. He'll burn his own country to ash before he surrenders. And if we stay, he'll do to us what he did to them. He gestures at 20,000 corpses. The greatest army on earth, undefeated conquerors of Constantinople, retreat. Not because they lost battle. Because they lost their nerve. Vlad the Impaler, with 30,000 peasants and willingness to become monster, has defeated 60,000 Ottoman soldiers without firing a shot. The forest of the impaled had done what no army could. Made the Sultan blink. Vlad had terrified Sultan. But he hadn't defeated empire. Ottomans, recovering from shock, regrouped and continued advance. They took capital only to find it empty. Vlad had retreated into mountains fighting desperate guerrilla war. Waiting for reinforcements he'd been promised. He rode north to border of Transylvania to meet his ally, King Matthias Corvinus of Hungary. Pope had given Matthias massive fortune in gold to lead crusade against Turks. Vlad believed King was coming with army to join forces and push Ottomans back across Danube. He was wrong. Matthias Corvinus had no intention of fighting. He'd already spent crusade money on his own personal wars and luxuries. If he attacked Ottomans now, he'd be crushed. But he had problem. Couldn't just tell Pope he'd embezzled funds. He needed scapegoat. Needed reason to explain why champion of Christendom was abandoning fight. So instead of army, Vlad found chains. Matthias arrested Vlad on trumped-up charges of treason. Produced forged letters, clumsy fakes written in style Vlad would never use, claiming Impaler was secretly plotting with Sultan to take over Hungary. It was a lie. But Matthias needed to sell it to world. To justify imprisoning man seen by many as hero of faith, King launched campaign that would do far more damage than any sword. He launched world's first smear campaign using revolutionary new technology, the printing press. Starting in 1463, German pamphlets began appearing across Holy Roman Empire. These were tabloids of 15th century. Featured gruesome woodcuts and sensational titles like The Frightening and Truly Extraordinary Story of a Wicked Blood-Drinking Tyrant Called Dracula. These pamphlets didn't just report news, they exaggerated it into horror fiction. Claimed Vlad dipped bread in blood of victims. Described him roasting children and forcing mothers to eat them. While Vlad was certainly brutal, these stories were designed to strip him of humanity, painting him as raving lunatic rather than calculating military strategist. They were bestsellers. Merchants of Saxony, whom Vlad had punished for tax evasion years earlier, eagerly spread these tales to destroy his reputation. While Vlad rotted in tower at Visegrad for 12 years. His brother Radu the Handsome took throne of Wallachia. Radu was everything Vlad was not. Soft, compliant, loyal to Ottomans. Didn't rule with stakes. Ruled with gold and promises. The boyars, tired of terror, flocked to him. Wallachia became quiet, obedient vassal state. The impossible war ended not with bang, but with political backstab. Warrior was locked away. Legend of monster was printed, distributed, sold for few pennies. Burying truth of man under centuries of ink and superstition. Politics is a wheel. And eventually it turns back around. By 1475, Ottomans were threatening Hungary again. King Matthias realized, while he hated Vlad, he needed him. He needed monster to fight monster. After 12 years rotting in prison, chains were unlocked. Vlad was dusted off. Given new army. Pointed south toward old home. He retook Wallachian throne in November 1476. But world had changed. He was older. Allies dead. Enemies everywhere. His third reign lasted barely 2 months. December 1476, while marching to battle near Bucharest, Vlad disappeared into fog of war. Accounts of his death are murky. Some say killed by stray Ottoman lance. Others claim his own soldiers, tired of endless bloodshed, assassinated him. Most tragic versions suggest mistaken identity. In thick of battle, his men didn't recognize him, struck him down thinking he was Turkish commander. While body was likely buried in unmarked grave at Snagov Monastery, his head had one final journey. Assassins hacked it off. To prove to Sultan that son of devil was truly dead. Preserved head in jar of honey, sweet embalming fluid for bitter enemy, and sent it to Constantinople. Mem the Conqueror, man who'd once turned horse around in terror at Forest of Impaled, finally had his trophy. He displayed Vlad's head on high stake above city gates. The Impaler was finally impaled. That should have been the end. Brutal warlord dies. Kingdom absorbed. History moves on. But Vlad refused to stay dead. 400 years later, in dusty London library, Irish theatre manager named Bram Stoker stumbled upon book. Looking for name for new Gothic novel about undead. Found footnote about Wallachian prince named Dracula, meaning son of dragon, or son of devil. Stoker knew almost nothing about real history. Didn't know about turban nails, golden cup, biological warfare. Just like sound of name. Combined that name with gruesome details from German propaganda pamphlets. And in 1897, Dracula was born. Military strategist who fought to save Christian Europe was transformed into aristocratic vampire who feared crucifixes. Today, if you visit Romania, you'll find strange duality. In West, Dracula is Halloween costume. Creature of fiction. In Romania, Vlad still revered by many as hero. Harsh but just ruler who stood tall when everyone else knelt. Iron Prince who burned corruption out of country. The true horror of Vlad the Impaler isn't that he drank blood. He didn't. The horror is reality of what he did do. He showed us that line between hero and monster is often just matter of perspective. He proved that sometimes, to defeat nightmare, you have to become one. And perhaps that's why we're still talking about him 6 centuries later. We tell ghost stories to scare ourselves with fantasy. But deep down we know, scariest things in dark aren't vampires. They're men with absolute power and will to use it. 20,000 corpses on stakes stopped 60,000 Ottoman soldiers. Not through military might. Through terror so complete it broke Sultan's courage. That's not supernatural. That's strategy. Dark, brutal, horrifying strategy, but strategy nonetheless. The real Dracula was worse than any vampire. Because he was real.